Welcome to this edition of INI 9, and I have with me Dr. V. Anantanageshwaran, Geoeconomics Fellow at Takshashila, and we're going to discuss the consequences of the United States acquiring energy independence. In recent weeks, we saw reports of how the United States has discovered new ways of extracting oil and natural gas from rock deposits using new technologies, which include fracking, which are environmentally troublesome but have the potential of giving the United States oil, as much of oil and natural gas as it needs. So, Anand, what should we make of this on the face of it?
Yeah, I think just to sort of give more color to this story that you mentioned, it appeared in New York Times, and essentially they say that to get the facts straight, the United States used to import nearly 60% to two-thirds of its oil needs. Now it is down to 45%. And by 2018 or 2020, the United States might be completely self-sufficient for its hydrocarbon needs through oil produced within its on its shore. I think the implications are, of course, on the face of it, largely positive for America, positive for American dollar because America always used to have a trade deficit, and oil imports used to contribute a substantial portion to that trade deficit. To that extent, the trade deficit will come down, and therefore, dependence on foreigners to finance the US deficit will also come down. But I think more importantly, from an Indian angle, we should look at what it means for US role in the Middle East and therefore, or non-role of the US going forward, and what it would mean for India.
Right. So basically, from the economics angle, it means that to the extent that they rely less on energy supplies from the Middle East, they
Mhm.
are less beholden to the kind of regimes, pleasant and unpleasant, that exist in those places,
That's
and
right.
it means that the U.S. will have greater independence or greater lack of dependence on the whims of these regimes in that part of the world, right?
I think definitely, as you put it, the United States would be less required or less obligated to heed the sensitivities in that region. So it may choose to abandon the current pursuit of stability that it needs for its own oil purposes. So to that extent, I think there is a potential for the region to become unstable. Of course, the very first implication anybody would draw more straightforwardly is if the US imports less oil from overseas, that much of oil should be available for other countries to draw upon. And to that extent, I think the incremental supply globally coming from the United States should mean lower oil prices, which is good for India, and not necessarily higher oil price. But that is, of course, a more straightforward interpretation. There are some offsets to this. One is, I mean, a recent issue of The Economist magazine, which is April 2nd edition, does talk about the massive spike in consumption within the Middle East itself. Saudi Arabia is just trailing behind China in terms of consumption growth in the last decade, and the growth rate is 78% from 2000 to 2010, behind China's 90% jump in consumption. And therefore, whatever oil that United States self-sufficiency frees up for other countries may end up being consumed within the Middle East itself. That is number one. Number two, to the extent that there is less stability in the region, and because the US is no longer looking over the region and assuring its stability, will mean less reliability of oil supply from the region for countries like India.
Hmm. Yeah, and then that's the interesting part because you see, I think there are two sort of countervailing forces.
That's right.
The US getting out as a buyer means there's more supply which is available for India and China, which means the prices can come down. But because of its exit, the instability in those parts might increase, causing risks to supplies. Therefore, the price might actually increase, right? So
That
we can't say much about the oil price movement merely on this, but what it
yeah,
means is that increases the requirement for China and for India to be more engaged in this part of the world, because now you don't have a external guarantor of stability, And if you
That's
want to enjoy the lower oil prices, you better do something about it.
No, I think you are right. It is difficult to say a priori whether the net impact on the price of oil will be to ensure a higher oil price or a lower oil price going forward. That we agree. But I think if you are a prudent policy maker, you would assume that the negative effect of instability in the region will have probably a higher impact on the oil price than the positive impact of overall global supply increasing. So, for prudent purposes, one would have to make an assumption that the net impact would be for higher rather than lower oil price and proceed accordingly. And also, I mean, you pointed out to the fact that it requires India and China to engage themselves more actively and more closely in the region. That's one thing. The second impact I mentioned very earlier is if the US trade deficit were to go down, because recently, in fact, in the last 2 3 months, the US monthly trade deficit number has once again sort of crossed the $50 billion per month threshold, above 15. So essentially, if you extrapolate it for a year, the US is about $600 billion of trade deficit. And you're talking about a GDP of around 14 to $15 trillion. You're talking about 4% trade deficit itself. So, but if the oil imports are going to come down, then to the extent that this trade deficit that needs to be financed will come down, and the dependence on countries like China or the Middle East, which end up buying the US treasuries or US assets to finance the trade deficit, that comes down too. So the US, in fact, frees itself up a lot more in terms of following a foreign policy that can be entirely dictated by US interest rather than the dependence on A, the Middle East for oil, and B, on the Middle East and China and the rest of Asia for financing its trade deficit. So you have a double level of freedom that the US will get, and the implications can be quite tremendous going forward.
Yeah, and back to the thing now for the India and China angle, right? Now there is
Yes,
a certain incentive for India and China to cooperate in terms of ensuring stability in the Middle East. Now you could look at it two ways. If
yes,
China so decides that look, let's it's me or nothing. So let us enjoy strike deals to the extent that they benefit us and leave India out, or both India and China could cooperate and say, look, the security of this region is of interest to us. There is nobody else who has the capability or the requirement to ensure the stability, so we have to cooperate, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that is a more benign interpretation. But let's go back to one of the remarks I made earlier, which is that let's say the US is going to be less dependent on China buying US treasuries or other assets. Of course, it's a different question. Whether China will at that time continue to have a trade and current account surpluses to be able to invest in the first place. Let's assume that it still has, even though the number could be reduced. To the extent that the US is less dependent on China, then China could actually find itself having to become more aggressive to make sure that its voice is influential in the international space, because the US will be less sort of sensitive to
Yeah.
China's needs. So, do you think in that situation China will necessarily co-opt India into the process of ensuring stability, or would China like to go it alone in a space that might be vacated by the US?
Yeah, that's right. So that's one question. And the
Yeah.
second question is probably, I think we both might not be the best people to answer it. But to the
That's right.
extent that these technologies are available for to both India and to China, we could
Yes.
be trying to do the fracking and extracting natural gas and oil through the same technologies, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for India, I think the two most important problems, besides a host of others that are holding back growth, it is the energy sufficiency and the consequent impact on the power supply availability in the country. If you take care of these two, you're talking about adding about 2% to GDP growth per annum, and that's a very big number. So yes, I mean, these technologies we should consider deploying them, subject to the fact that they are environmentally sustainable and desirable, because India, as we know, and China have already caused a lot of damage in their pursuit of high growth to some of the ecological and environmental balance in the country in terms of groundwater depletion. And our own Takshashila fellow Narayan wrote a piece in the Mint recently about the level of arsenic content that has come up because of groundwater depletion. So I think India needs to balance these considerations while deploying these technologies. At the same time, I think instead, can India invest much more money than it has, both in terms of human resources and finance, on the so-called renewable technologies, given the fact that the country is abundantly blessed with sunshine?
Right.
Can, so that is another angle to look at as well.
Right. Thanks, Anant. It was a great discussion. I think we should continue this conversation with some other people, and we'll try and do this in subsequent episodes.
Thank you, Nathan.